This afternoon, my wife started in again. Yeah, she keeps throwing up when I work Las Vegas. I went broke playing the slot machines, you know. I'll tell you, Las Vegas, they got slot machines all over, even in supermarkets. I went in to buy a container of milk, cost me $238. My old man, he didn't help either. The time I was kidnapped, they sent back a piece of my finger. He said he wanted more proof. Hey, you kid, I know I'm ugly. I stuck my head out the window, got arrested for mooning. I know I'm ugly. I went to a freak show. They let me in for nothing. Kid, I was an ugly kid, too. How ugly? I was so ugly, my mother breastfed me through a straw. Hey, my wife can't do nothing right. She can't cook, the worst cook in the world. Gave my kid alphabet soup. He spelled out help. What a lousy cook. I mean, how can toast have bones? She's a lousy cook, too. She can't cook at all. I leave dental floss in the kitchen, the roaches hang themselves. I live in New York, on the west side, you know. Rough neighborhood, rough. I'll tell you, I live in the only neighborhood when I plan my budget, I allow for hold-up money. What a neighborhood. Well, the first day I moved in, I asked a cop, I said, how long I walk to the subway? He said, I don't know. So far, no one ever made it. No, it's a rough building, I tell you, rather, nothing but every night there's robberies, forget about it. Nothing but robberies in my apartment building, you know? I mean, every time I close a window, I hit somebody's hands. I tell you, folks, with me, nothing comes easy. You know, I can't lose any weight. I tried jogging. I keep running into restaurants.
Good morning. It's Friday, June the 2nd, and this is The True Conservative. Welcome to all the butchers, bakers, and candlestick makers out there. I'm Ron, your host, and the only true conservative in the United States today. So today, after the Serenity Prayer and the Star-Spangled Banner, we will have Stuart Varney, No Free Lunch, The Rape of the Mind, The Five, and we will have Hillary Clinton versus rick-santorum. You decide. All that and more when I get back. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Amen.
Ladies and gentlemen, please remain standing and remove your hats for the national anthem of the United States of America.
Thank you. And now there's No Free Lunch. 250 Economic Truths by David-Bahnsen. Quote, capitalism offers nothing but frustrations and rebuffs to those who wish, because of claimed superiority of intelligence, birth credentials, or ideals, to get without giving, to take without risking, to profit without sacrifice, to be exalted without humbling themselves, to understand others and meet their needs, unquote. George Gilder. The character trait of listening enhances the skill of the entrepreneur. Empathy is rewarded in free enterprise. Aloofness is punished. These disciplines start with humility and feed the positive feedback loop that is the free and virtuous society. And that was There's No Free Lunch by David. Thank you. Who is the true conservative? He knows that the government has no rights. He is religious. He is patriotic and uses common sense. He makes judgments, refuses to speculate, speaks clearly and definitively, and is not afraid to say no. He's open-minded, asking why rather than why not. He is consistent, credible, and influential, not ashamed of his existence, unafraid to learn or correct his mistakes. He is a normal American. Back in a minute. Thank you. Who is the liberal? He is the man that seeks consensus. He is subjective, petty, and small, taking everything in life personally. He's outrageous, boring, and rude. He pretends to be a leader and a change agent. He pretends that he's your friend. He is sly, cunning, and deceptive. He dresses, acts, and speaks like a slob. He's informal and terminally unique. He's childish and pretends that he knows nothing. He has no conscience and pretends that might makes right and that the ends justify the means. He is impulsive and rationalizes his behavior. He is deterministic, blaming others for his mistakes. He is skeptical, demanding that others solve his problems. His unreasonableness and irresponsibility make him a bad role model, bad father, brother, family member, friend, and a bad person, period. So if you think that you can be friends with a socialist, think again. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now, the rape of the mind, the explanation of delusion. One of the most coercive delusions is the explanation delusion, the need to explain and interpret everything because the person has a simple ideology in his pocket. Unwittingly, the victim of this delusion wraps the magic cloak of omniscience around himself, and this provokes awe and submission in those men who have a strong need for rational explanation of phenomena they do not understand. The quack, for instance, with his gesture of omniscience, pushes his victim into a kind of nothingness so that he feels himself become smaller and smaller in relation to the great mysteries of the world. It is this compulsive need to be the wise guy and the magician who knows all the answers that we so often find in the totalitarian world. And nobody, your author included, is completely free from seizing on these premature answers. It is among the intelligentsia, and especially among those who like to play with thoughts and concepts without really taking part in the cultural endeavors of their epoch, that we often find the glib compulsion to explain everything and to understand nothing. Their retreat into intellectual isolation and ivory tower philosophy is a source of much hostility and suspicion from those who receive the stones of intellectualism instead of the bread of understanding. The intelligentsia has a special role in our democratic world as teachers of ideas, but every teaching is an emotional relation, a matter of loving your students. It is a moving among them and taking part in their doubts in order to share together the advantage of common exploration of the unknown. Paradoxically, we may say that we need the experience with the totalitarians if only to discover a reflection of their rigidities in our own democratic system. And that was The Rape of the Mind by Joost-meerlo, M.D. Back in a minute. Thank you. So listening to Stuart Varney, and they're doing their own version of what I've been doing, which is You Decide. Listen.
Years of making good decisions, and, I don't know that that's going to get any better as time goes on.
Certainly the most demanding job in the world, no doubt. Well, let's move on to the 2024 race. Ron DeSantis says a president would need a full 8 years to roll back all of Joe Biden's policies. But, Donald Trump says, well, that's not true. Watch this.
You really need to ensure that we have a two-term president to be able to see this to a conclusion. I mean, you do one term and they reverse it when they come in. You can't have it be reversed. You got to have humility. You can't be prideful. It can't be just about you.
DeSantis saying, I get 8 years, he gets 4. You don't need 4 and you don't need 8. You need 6 months. Within 6 months, I said, within 6 months, this can be done.
So there you have it. Ron DeSantis versus Donald Trump. You decide. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now the next segment of You Decide is going to be between Hillary Clinton and a former congressman. Hillary Clinton wrote a book called It Takes a Village, and he wrote a book that's called It Takes a Family. So first up is Hillary Clinton and It Takes a Village.
For her own home and children. Learning about my mother's childhood sparked my strong conviction that every child deserves a chance to live up to her God-given potential and that we should never quit on any child. We all depend on other adults whom we know, from teachers to doctors to neighbors to pastors, and on those whom we may not, from police to firefighters to employers to media producers to political leaders, to help us inform, support, or protect our children. In the last 10 years, science has proven how resilient children can be despite great obstacles. And that's where other adults may step in, to help nurture children and to provide positive role models. This small book with the bright, whimsical jacket provided endless opportunities for headline writers who have come up with such variations as it takes a village to have a parade. It takes a village to build a zero-waste community. And my all-time favorite, it takes a village to raise a pig. More significantly, the book helped initiate conversations about how parents and the greater community, the village, all shape the lives of children. People took its message to heart. During my travels as First Lady, several people told me that their PTA had adopted It Takes a Village as a slogan to encourage more community involvement. At a children's hospital, I saw staff wearing buttons that said, "This is the village that takes care of children." I got off a plane in Asmara, Eritrea on an official trip to Africa and was greeted by a large group of women with a colorful painted sign, "Yes, it really does take a village." Today's electronic village has certainly complicated the always difficult challenge of parenting and raising the next generation. When It Takes a Village was published, the internet was largely the province of scientists. No one owned an iPod or a PSP, and cell phones weighed as much as bricks. Innovations are now coming at an exponentially faster pace, and media saturates our kids' lives as never before. Many of these changes are for the good. When I was in college, a phone call home was rare and a flight home a once-a-year luxury. Now I know traveling parents who see and speak to their kids every day by computer and video hookups, and I think how much Bill would have loved that while he was campaigning, or how much joy that kind of contact would have given my parents who didn't live nearby when Chelsea was born. But knowing that 1/3 of kids under 6 have televisions in their rooms, that the fashion industry is marketing its latest styles to preteen girls, and that predators stalk our children through the World Wide Web, makes me thankful to have raised Chelsea in a less media-saturated time. Young children as well as teenagers have phones, computers, and televisions in their rooms, and cell phones and iPods in their backpacks. These new technologies make it more difficult for parents to monitor what their children are watching or hearing unless they're prepared to supervise every minute of computer time or listen to every song in the iPod. A decade of new research confirms that heavy exposure to violent and sexually explicit media triggers unhealthy responses from boys and girls alike. But we don't yet know the full effects of all this technology on our kids. CAMERA, the Children and Media Research Advancement Act, which I introduced in the Senate, would coordinate and fund new research into the effects of viewing and using electronic media, including television, computers, video games, and the internet, on children's cognitive, social, physical, and psychological development. In the last decade, we've also learned much more about our children's earliest development. Scientists now say that the foundation for intelligence and emotional development comes very early on, and above all from the steady, dependable love and attention of one or two key people. They confirm that at least some of the capacity to learn grows out of the capacity for emotional attachment. Our genes interact with the environment to make us who we are. Nature and nurture work hand in hand in children's development. We know that across the board, parents want to spend more time with their kids. Mothers are spending less time on themselves so they can be with their children more, and an increasing number of fathers say their families come first. Men under 40 are more likely to say they would give up pay to spend time with their families. What's more, according to new research, the time married fathers spend caring for their children has doubled since 1965. This is a great change for the better. Yet economic and time pressures throw up new obstacles to putting our families first. As family incomes stagnate, parents work longer hours to pay for the material things their kids need and to keep up with the rising cost of health care, education, housing, and other basic services. It is harder and harder for one parent to stay home during the early years, even for those who desperately want to. And as we learn more about the kind of intensive child care that gives our kids the best start, parents worry that their kids' care doesn't measure up. Our tax policies do not reflect the costs of raising children, which is why we should expand the child tax credit for the first year of a child's life to help parents stay home and give lower-income parents who receive government support for child care the option to use the subsidies to cover the costs of staying home and caring for their own children. And I want to see the Family and Medical Leave Act expanded so that all families who need it can use it without fear of losing their jobs. It is past time for our national politics to do more than just talk about family values. We need to value families by helping them raise resilient, productive children, not just for their own sakes, but for all of us. Two stark threats intrude on our children's daily lives much more than they did 10 years ago. Even very young children today live with the fear of terrorism and the knowledge of war.
Okay, that was Hillary Clinton reading her book, and now we will hear from Mr. Rick-Santorum and his book called It Takes a Family.
Most important for me as I confront the choices I must make in my own life as a husband, father, citizen, and lawmaker. I'll explain FAMILY, the acronym, a bit later, but the word family is where I want to start. It's where we have to start, because it's where we all do start. A fact that many in Washington often overlook. The liberal news media, Hollywood, and the educational elite in America tend to portray political liberals as the courageous champions of the average guy, and of course the poor. It's simply assumed that their more enlightened economic policies are all about helping the poor and middle class. Conservatives, on the other hand, are portrayed as fundamentally selfish, self-centered individuals whose economic policies are crafted to protect or advance their or their golf partners' special interests. Another view the media echo chamber promotes is that liberal social policies are rational, tolerant, progressive, and of course caring. Social conservatives, on the other hand, are portrayed as irrational, ignorant, rigid Bible thumpers, obsessed with prophesying woe. In this book, I hope to show that these all too common caricatures of conservatives and their social policies by the liberal elite can be attributed to liberals' fundamentally different vision of America, a vision that is completely at odds with that of our nation's founders and with the views of most Americans today. Liberalism is an ideology. Conservatism is common sense. By almost any measure, the political, economic, and social achievements of this nation in just over 2 centuries are astounding, and American accomplishments in our own lifetime are no less extraordinary. But the simple truth is, as the voters in the 2004 elections indicated, not everything is well in America. If, over the past generation, we have made great strides in some areas, it is also the case that in the same generation, we have seen alarming trends in American society as well. An epidemic of promiscuity and sexually transmitted diseases among the young, crime rates that are still much too high, extreme violence and offensive sexual content on everything from video games to the internet. 3,500 healthy, expectant mothers carrying healthy children, exercising a choice to end the lives of their children every day. Religion under assault by the media and liberal activists, and then booted from the public square by court order. Our schools failing the poor in providing the basics of life and indoctrinating both rich and poor with politically correct dogma instead of virtue and truth. The foundational institution of every civilization known to man, marriage, is under siege, and millions retreating from our neighborhoods and the civic and fraternal organizations that bind us together. Across America, when they gather at backyard barbecues or Little League games, parents share with each other their deep concerns about how hard the world around us makes it to raise children the right way today. Once our social, governmental, and educational institutions, along with the popular culture, seem to work together to aid parents in raising their children. Today, many feel that these same institutions are somehow conspiring against them. The significance of the values voters in the 2004 election shows that many Americans can feel in their bones that something isn't right, and they're looking to something or someone for answers. That points to a problem facing postmodern America. We too readily look to those wielding power and influence to solve society's big problems for us. In particular, we look to the government. And why not? They are society's problems, and the government is society's representative. But over the past generation, we have been learning that governmental, cultural, social, moral, and intellectual power brokers in far too many cases have made our problems worse. This has created a vicious downward spiral in which the more the public relies on the powerful elite, the worse it gets, which leads to the public relying on those elites even more. Who are these big, powerful?
Okay, so there you have it. Hillary Clinton with her book, It Takes a Village, and Rick-Santorum with his book, It Takes a Family. You decide. Back in a minute.
Come with me begin with a spin, traveling in a world of my creation. What we'll see will defy explanation. If you want to feel paradise, simply look around and view it. Anything you want to do it. Want to change the world, there's nothing to it. If you truly wish to be, if you truly wish to There is no life I know to compare with pure imagination. Living there, you'll be free if you truly wish to be. Living there, you'll be free if you truly wish to be.
Thank you. I'm Ron, your host and the only true conservative in the United States today, bidding adios to all of the butchers, bakers, and candlestick makers out there. And until next time, be honest, be smart, be beautiful, and remember that the left has no authority, no power, and they can't win.